Hi, everyone, and welcome to another Software and Internet Monthly Market Report brought to you by Sanford Advisors. July, surprisingly, was actually a pretty strong month, especially in terms of dollars invested in the M&A market for software companies. So it's $12.9 billion invested in the month, 107 transactions. So that continues the trend of a lower number of transactions that we've seen throughout the pandemic, which we'll talk about a bit later, and an average multiple across all transactions of 4.7 times. So that's definitely come down from where we've seen it earlier in the year, and we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. A couple of big transactions with disclosed multiples. So CDK was acquired by Brookfield for 4.7 times revenue. So very consistent with the average multiple for the month. GI Partners acquired GTY for 372 million, or a 5.7 times multiple. So some of those multiples are definitely reflective of what we're seeing in the market right now, where those double digit 10, 20, 30 times revenue multiples that were very prevalent last year are very much less common in this kind of market. Where are we shaping up for the year? Well, still very strong growth in terms of the dollar volume of transactions. Like if we continue at the current pace that we've done for the first 7 months, we'll be, nearly 3x what we were, or 2.5x what we were last year, which was already a record. So going to be a very large year in terms of the dollars deployed already year to date, bigger than last year's record. So huge number of very large transactions taking place in this market. And they continue to, quite frankly, given some of the transactions that's announced this month. The number of transactions is a little bit of a different story. So, last year at 2,300 transactions was a bit of a peak. That's come down pretty significantly, but probably going to trend, higher than the last few years prior to 2021. So, pretty consistent with 2018 or a little bit higher than 2018, kind of in that 1,800 to 2,000 range, but still off of 2021 levels. In terms of valuations, you can kind of see here the real tightening of valuations, which, we've talked about this a lot, how wide valuations have been through the pandemic between the 25th percentile at the bottom of these candlesticks and 75th percentile at the top. You can see that that's really tightened up. So the second quarter and the start of the third quarter have been pretty consistent, like come down in terms of the average multiple paid, but also the spread between the 25th and the 75th has really closed up. Just kind of showing a little bit of that tighter M&A market that we've been talking about. And in terms of average multiples, so this line continues to average and normalize a little bit lower. And interestingly enough, very consistent with pre-pandemic levels. So we're at 6.5 times for a SaaS business, where we were at 6.2 times in 2019. So I would say that we were probably going to average around that sort of level for the year. So definitely normalization across the market, and very much seen here. And then on terms of monthly deal counts, you can see this, like, 6 months in a row where we've had much lower deal volume than we've had historically over the last kind of couple of years. So we think this is going to continue, and we're going to kind of be, as we've said before, in this 100 to 200 deals per month rather than the 160 to 190 a month. And just kind of showing a little bit more of a more normalized market. On the VC side, 3.7 billion invested in the month, 400 transactions, and a median deal size of 3.5 million. So that's come down a bit. Like that's usually for the last 18 months has been about 5 million average deal size. So that's definitely come down a little bit from where we've expected in the past. A couple of notable transactions: Miston Labs raised 200 million, Aptos Labs raised 150 million. No disclosed multiples there, but still pretty active in terms of the large transactions that are happening. And you can see where that's going to shape up for the year. So pretty consistent with last year's record in terms of dollars deployed. And interestingly enough, on this current run rate, probably more transactions are going to close than they did last year. And then lastly, valuations. Still this chart shows still elevated numbers. They've definitely come down pretty considerably, as we've been talking about the last couple of months. We're just kind of waiting for more data points to kind of pull this average down even more. But at the moment, year-to-date numbers show pretty sustained levels, but they're definitely coming down from where they have been. Anyway, see you next month. And if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out. Happy to answer anything that you might have. And enjoy the rest of the summer, and we'll see you in September.